Welcome back, and we have a couple more Linux questions for you. You're getting ready for any of the exams, the Linux Plus, the Red Hat Certified Engineer, the Oracle exams. We are here to help. So today we've got two more questions from my book. My book's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. We're getting some good reviews out there. The questions come from chapter 1. So this will be question number 43 and 44, and this is our pre-test exam. Which Linux run level puts the system in multi-user mode as a network server with a command line interface? And so we got 1, 2, 3, and 5 options A, B, C, and D. Go ahead and pause here if you want to figure out the answer on your own. Otherwise, the answer is C. Run level 3 is multi-user mode as a network server with a command line interface. And to kind of go over with these different run levels, let me kind of just bring up a quick drawing. Oh, by the way, remember to like and subscribe and donate either on my CashApp or PayPal. My wife would love it. So that's a terrible drawing. She looks 100 times better than that. Now, if we look at the different run levels, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 0 is basically your shutdown, and it doesn't generally mean power off. That's a kind of another feature, but it's something, but it's kind of similar. It will just take it down to the BIOS level, and then at that point you can power it off with your button. And then 1 is single user. This would be similar to safe mode in Windows. And sometimes this, you'll see some systems, this will also be the letter S, uppercase or lowercase s. And then when you get to run level 2, that's a multi-user client. And so, and it's command line. CLI stands for command line interface. With run level 2, there's no server. You don't have an SSH server running, you don't have a web server running, you don't have a DNS server running. But if you go to run level 3, this is a multi-user server. And so this is the run state you'll see in most server rooms, command line interface. And so here you would have an SSH server, a web server, DNS server if you like, DHCP server if you like. So generally you get services at run state 3. Run state 4 is really there for you to create your own customizations, and then run state 5 is basically run state 3 with graphics and sound. Multi-user server, graphical user interface. Now run state 6 is your reboot. Run level shuts the system down and brings it back up. But those are your 7 run levels. In a future video we'll talk about, so this was used with the init process, with init. When they moved to system D had has different names for these. I believe in the next video, it's the next video, the one after that, where we talk about system D and the system D run levels. So, but just to give you a quick glimpse, run level 3, for example, in system D terminology would be the run level 3 dot target, and then your single user would be your rescue dot target, and then run level 5 would be your graphical dot target. So coming attractions, you'll see that, I believe it's the next video or the one after that one. And just real briefly, then if you want to change run levels, you would just go, let's say let me go back to my Linux system. If we run the who minus R command. That shows us our current run level. And then if I become root, I can use the init command to change my run levels. So let's say I want to become run level 3. I'll say init space 3, or we'll do 6 for a reboot. Init space 6, and that will now change my run level from run level 5 to a reboot. So now my system is rebooting and starting up again. So that's the different run levels. And the next question has to do with grub. It's question number 44. An administrator must configure the grub2 bootloader such that it will boot the first operating system in the boot menu by default unless an end user manually selects an operating system within the timeout period. Directives should be set within the etc default grub configuration file to do this. So we've got A, grub default, B, save default, C, hidden timeout quiet, D, command line Linux. And we'll go ahead and you can pause the video. Otherwise, the answer for this one is A, grub default. And so what we'll do, we'll take a look at the etc default grub file to learn about these different options. We're booted back up again. All right, let me bring up a terminal, and I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you can see it a little bit better out there. We'll use the VI editor / etc default grub. And we've got several options in here. You got your timeout setting. The timeout setting is there to give you time to change which operating system you want to boot. So if you got a multi-boot system, you've got 5 seconds to change from the default to a different system. Let's say you want to boot Windows. Now the answer to our question was default, and so ours is called saved. And so it's going to use the last default that we used to boot at, and then if this value is set to 0, you'll have multiple operating systems to choose from. It'll choose the first operating system, and I'll show you that in a minute. We don't have save default here, but if we had save default, whatever was booted last, whatever operating system was booted last would be the default the next time we boot the system. We also don't have the hidden timeout quiet setting. If that were set to true, that timeout variable that we see that we've got set to 5 seconds, you'll see a little clock there. If that were set to true, that clock will be quiet. You won't see it at all, but it'll still time out for 5 seconds. You just won't see the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We do have the grub command line Linux here, and so these are the values that are passed to the kernel so that we boot the system in the proper manner. So here it defines where the logical volumes are located, and so you got your CentOS root logical volume, and then what's going to be root and what will be swap. So that's all in the command line Linux setting. Let me quickly show you just what happens, what file gets created. Let's get out of this, and then we'll change directories to boot / grub 2. And the file that gets created, the grub make config, is grub.cfg. And here is taking settings from etc default grub to build this file. So, and it says here, it's automatically generated by grub2 make config using templates from grub.d and etc default grub. So the one we were modifying was etc default grub. Now if we scroll down here, let me do a / on timeout, a search on timeout. So here our timeout is set to 5 seconds. And then let's scroll further through the bottom of the file, and we'll see our different operating system selections. So this first one where it says menu entry, that's going to be your 0. So since our grub default is equal to 0, this will be the one it boots. That's 0. The next one where we start with menu entry would be 1. So that'd be if we had set it to 1 to boot this version. And then we have another menu entry. This would have been, of course, been 2, and so on. If we take a look, we see this one's called menu entry rescue. And let me scroll up a little bit. It's until Linux 3.10 1062. Scroll up a little bit. Linux 10 1062.4.3, x64 1062.1.1. So let's just quickly show you how that gets used. I'll queue to quit out of this more command, and we'll do a reboot. And again, I could do init space 6 or just type the reboot command. And when this boots up, and if I hit escape here, notice these are our menu entries. All right. And so if I wanted to boot a different version, let's say I want to boot the rescue version, I would just press enter here. You may have noticed earlier that the timer, the 5-second timer, was down here. And then in a future video, we'll show you how to edit these lines as well, but we'll save that for coming attractions. Press enter here to boot in rescue mode. And notice when you're in emergency mode, it comes up in a manner, hopefully you can see this. I know this is really small. I can't make it bigger. I apologize. But let me try something here. All right, so I went inside of scaled mode in VirtualBox to scale this up. But you notice that in order to use rescue mode, you will need to know the root password, because for security reasons, there's a lot that could be done that a hacker could do if they can get into rescue mode. So they have to put in the root password, and now you can maybe back up the system or determine whose password needs to be changed, or repair the hard drive, whatever you need to do at this point. Reclaim disk space if your hard drive got full, whatever work needs to be done. So that's it for these 2 questions. We will cover more. That's 43 and 44. We'll cover more Linux topics in the next video. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, donate for my wife, and we'll see you in the next video.